certainly taking over the situation, and that is where the SEB is coming from. Obviously, it's a county agency. So we'll wait for them and see how long it takes. Hopefully we'll get a word here on their progress, but they have been dispatched. They are on the way out here. Just a matter of time now before they can eventually pull up and make a new analysis as to what their next steps are going to be. They have to arrive on scene and then strategize what their next steps are, but certainly these officers can get a better glimpse now, the more time that goes by, whether he's still moving, whether they can actually communicate with him, whether there's a cell phone in the vehicle is something that they'll be asking the driver who's been apprehended. All of those things taking place, and certainly if they have to bring in a negotiator, if that's the case, if he is still alive and breathing, if they have to bring in a negotiator or maybe get a family member on the line, all of those things now being considered. But at this point, a lot of those questions remain unanswered. I can tell you that they've moved pretty quickly, and it does look like, from what I'm hearing, the SEB is now arriving. They're in the neighborhood. Not sure if they've actually pulled up just yet, but they are getting very close.
And are you seeing any movement in that car from your vantage point, Chris?
The last report was about 10 minutes ago, where his hand and arm still appeared to be moving. But since then, we have not heard of any further movement. Just that glimmer of movement that we could see at times, which appears to be either some kind of paper blowing around through the windshield there. So no new reports on movement, but the last report, as I mentioned, about 10 minutes ago, after this shooting took place, it looks like he was moving his arm.
Sure, it'll be a big relief to these officers to be able to stand down once that Bearcat or whatever gets there and checks out the situation.
Yeah,
it's got to be tense.
I can't imagine. And a lot of these law enforcement, Chris, I'm trying to look at the vehicles, but they're from several different jurisdictions. If we're right, correct? I do see the sheriff's department there. I see. They look like they're. I know it started with Downey Police, and then Bell Garden Police got involved, and it's the LA County Sheriff's. But are all three of those?
All three are here. County is, and you can see still that presence is actually still growing. A number of unmarked units now arriving here at the intersection, and I can tell you that the LA County Sheriff's Department is still actively trying to shut down all of the traffic in this surrounding area. They are keeping the public far back from the situation. Fortunately, I should reiterate, it looks like from all angles, as I look out the window from Air 7 HD up here, traffic is very, very light, especially for a Friday afternoon. Really no major, no major groups of civilians in harm's way here.
That's good.
And how fortunate is that? But these people are just waiting to see if they're going to be able to keep moving. And a Friday afternoon, they could be there for hours if it's a standoff.
Yeah. That's the problem.
Yeah. Fortunately, as we heard, it does sound like this will hopefully be wrapped up sooner rather than later. They have moved pretty quick. SEB is now in the neighborhood and should be entering the frame here any second. Looking at the window here, we're trying to find some new canine units that are actually entering the frame. There we go. Pushed in there. Yeah, it looks like that's another canine unit arriving, and SEB is not far behind them.
Yeah.
Good. This will be interesting to just end this thing.
Exactly. I think, yeah.
It looks like that blue truck is just stuck there.
Yeah, that blue truck is the one that was part of the. You'll see it right here when this sort of shootout happens. Well, we were looking at it earlier, but
and we're again watching this video. Oh well, we just had it. Never mind.
Exactly. We were
Something you said earlier, Ellen and Colleen. It wasn't more than I believe a week ago, and I quite frankly I forget which jurisdiction it was, where we did see a pursuit termination, and very similarly, and they just let the canine run right up to the driver's side door in that situation, and make its own analysis before the officers approach the vehicle. So certainly, with canine units now on the scene down there, we'll see if they are put into action here.
I know, but you know what? As someone who comes from a long, we had
Your
a
father
police
was a
dog,
police.
And we had a police dog. I would be very worried if that were my dog in the car, because those dogs are fearless, and so many of them end up losing their life for, for a bad guy who didn't have any fear whatsoever when they were shooting at law enforcement. So I hope I know they have to put a lot of thought into it, because that is a police officer as well, these canines. They're just so darn brave, and they just they do what they're told. Ugh.
I wonder if we can pop up that freeze frame just moments ago, because it was a really chilling one. You could see, am I looking at both people outside the window? Just one? But you could see on
But
the
you see
passenger
something
side
on
there.
the driver's side as well.
Yeah, that could be the rear view mirror. It's hard to say because it's a little
Yeah.
grainy, but that you definitely see the passenger side.
Right outside that
I
window.
know.
No fear whatsoever. Just and you see law enforcement. Yeah. Well, let's see.
And here comes some special units, and should be able to resolve this.
Yeah, another tactical officer now stepping out of his vehicle, and again, still waiting for SEB to arrive. Again, we were told they were very close. Got to believe they can't be more than a few more minutes away from actually getting an armored vehicle. Here we go. It looks like they are just about a quarter mile away here. Here comes that Bearcat. There's the armored vehicle right there. Now speeding down Bandini to the scene here, and hopefully they can, again, approach that vehicle as soon as possible and bring this to an end as quickly as possible.
Yeah, he's certainly speeding down that road and getting there quickly. That's a good sign.
No kidding. It's amazing what these vehicles have. I've seen one of these. I think it was one of our Stuff a Truck events over the holidays. It's amazing. It is so reinforced, these types of vehicles, that, you know, if you're going to go up against somebody who might want to shoot at you, that's
You want to be in
there.
Exactly, fortified.
Yes, but yeah, they're going to probably just have to go right up next. I don't know. I hate to be calling the plays here when I have absolutely zero idea what they're going to end up doing.
At least they can go up to the car and they're just going right over the curb.
Right.
I mean, that thing is like a tank.
It really is.
It is very similar to a tank. It's built to, as you mentioned, drive over pretty much anything and is completely bulletproof. So it is the perfect tool in a situation like this, and we see them used so often here in Southern California, and in many cases saving the lives of the public and officers, and that's how they bring these situations to an end. When you can't approach the vehicle, you're concerned about an armed suspect inside of a compact car like that. The only way to do it is to approach the vehicle, and then they'll make an assessment, obviously, whether he's still moving around or whether they can communicate with him. And then, of course, the last resort is to use force, whether that means opening fire using their firearms, or if they're able to, open the car and open that car door and forcibly drag that suspect out.
And here he goes. They got out of the way, and they are approaching that vehicle right now.
Yeah, you know what, also, Chris, we're going to go to Bruce Thomas. He's also on the phone right now. He is a law enforcement expert. Bruce, many a times we call you in when we see these dramatic police pursuits taking place. This one, incredibly dramatic and incredibly violent. Tell us what you're seeing in the sense of the law enforcement background that you have.
The Sheriff's Department. The LA County Sheriff's Special Enforcement Bureau is on scene with their armored vehicle, or Bearcat as it's called. They're going to approach the vehicle from the front, boxing the vehicle in, so if the occupant is still alive or disabled, he can't drive away, but it also allows cover for the officers who eventually have to approach this vehicle.
And how safe are these for the officers? Are they bulletproof and completely 100% safe?
Yeah, Colleen, it's basically an armored vehicle with bulletproof glass, and it's very, very thick metal and will withstand multiple high rounds.
Wow. So what do you think, when you see the officers having to try to assess the situation, what is it that they have to, all the different variables, because someone who just hears that the whole thing is bulletproof, you just don't just drive up and look out the window and see if the person's dead or alive. They obviously have to do some certain protocols.
Yeah, basically you want to contain the scene, you want to control the scene, using verbal commands to the occupant to come out if he or she is able to, but also that's part of the communication. But eventually they will have to approach this vehicle in a safe manner, having eyes on the vehicle, and they may employ a canine vehicle also.
Okay, because they are certainly assessing the situation there, and I see some movement behind that Bearcat, but so far staying a bit of a distance away from that vehicle.
Yeah, they're going to stay behind the vehicle for cover and concealment. It provides safety for the officers. It does appear that the Special Enforcement Bureau from the Sheriff's Department is liaisoning with some sort of tactical units from the other agencies.
Wow. Are you surprised by the amount of law enforcement presence there? Or when you shoot at an officer, I guess that's some serious business and calls for even more reinforcement.
Yeah, this is a high-grade egregious felony. Obviously, the suspect has shown a wanton disregard for the police and himself at this point, and they're going to use every method they can to safely take this and have a great resolution, but at the same time, the suspect has already shown a wanton disregard to shoot at the police officers.
Mm-hmm. That's what's amazing. When you see that video, Bruce, what were you thinking when you saw that big old, you obviously probably know much more about guns than we do, but what kind of handgun or gun did that look like that the passenger had when he was opening fire on the officers?
You know, it looked like some sort of caliber, maybe a 9mm or something like that. It didn't look like a long rifle, but to have somebody shoot at the police like this is very, very rare, especially in a pursuit like this. And I know he's a possible murder suspect or is a murder suspect. He obviously does not want to go back to jail.
It's a fascinating look at that Bearcat and that rooftop that opens up, and it would be fascinating to see what's inside there. How many people can that fit, Bruce? And do you know what's inside that vehicle?
Without giving away tactics and numbers, it is pretty sparse inside. It's got mostly seats for the personnel that are in it. It does have the opening on top, like you just mentioned. It's a revolving turret to provide safety behind the armor plating, but it also allows the officers the ability to look at the vehicle or the suspect.
All right. Thank you for that.
It's very interesting, though.
It really is.
And then you have to... And then we could pull Chris Christie back into this conversation as well. Chris, are you learning any new details on what's going on the ground there as well?
Well, you can clearly see now a number of tactical officers now taking a position, trying to strategize, figure out what those next steps are going to be, and now bringing out their own artillery. And they will make an analysis pretty quick here. You can see them as they converse amongst each other, trying to figure out what the condition is, trying to make the best analysis of whether that person is still moving, whether his eyes are open or closed, where that weapon is, whether it's in the driver's seat, whether it's still in his hand, whether it's on the floorboard, or also where the keys are, which I believe, from what I've heard, the keys are actually still in the ignition. So not that the vehicle is going anywhere anytime soon, but certainly these are all details that SCB needs to be aware of and cognizant of as they eventually get ready to approach that vehicle. So a number of questions that they're trying to answer at this point. They will do this very, very methodically. At this point, time is on their side. It is technically a standoff situation, but without knowing the exact condition of that passenger, they have to take all precautions necessary. You could see they are getting ready and suiting up to approach that vehicle, so hopefully we'll see them do that in short order here. I can't imagine it'll be too much longer before they make their move.
Vehicles from the Sheriff's Department coming in. Hopefully they will get this resolved quickly and let those people just go on their way on a Friday afternoon. And it'll be interesting to see if the condition of that passenger.
I know.
I mean, this is certainly one of the more dramatic police pursuits we've seen in recent memory. I mean, with a suspect literally at one point hanging out of the window and pointing the gun as the car was still moving and shooting at officers who were in pursuit. It's been quite some time since we've seen anything quite like that. But with a suspect that's that dangerous and knowing what he's wanted for, it certainly justifies all of the force that we see building up here, just in this shot right here. I mean, look at the equipment that they have brought in to resolve this situation.
Incredible sight there. Well, in case you're just tuning in, we're having breaking news right here at ABC7. This is a dramatic shootout at the end of a police pursuit in Vernon. Colleen Sullivan, along with me, Ellen Leyva, and we've been watching this ending of this pursuit, and we saw someone fire shots out of the passenger window, and then multiple police officers opened fire. There you see the video on the right-hand side of the screen when those that right there, that car, it looks like a Toyota Prius. The shootout begins right there, just in the middle of traffic. You see that other car back away from that vehicle just to get out of the way. But that passenger completely outside of his window shooting at those officers.
Yeah, and it was really what a sight to see, and that's why you see this huge volume of law enforcement that have descended around this car to see if we know that the woman, if you keep watching the video on the right side, the female, the driver of the car gives up pretty quickly, but we don't know the condition of the passenger who was opening fire on law enforcement. Probably, I mean, when you see the car, you see it is riddled with bullet holes. There's a very good chance that that person was obviously hit as well. We just don't know to the severity of his injuries.
Hey, Rob, can you push?
And so and that's what we're talking about. Obviously, Chris is talking to his photographer, but you see the woman, she gives herself up, and this happened, I guess, about almost a half hour ago or 35 minutes ago, this pursuit.
She did quickly surrender and had to back away, and so now what's left is that passenger in the car, and they don't know his condition, if he's been shot, if he's incapacitated, or if it's a standoff situation. They just have to be sure the condition of that passenger, and that's why we've been having the standoff and waiting.
And that's why you see all the law enforcement out there with their guns pointed at that car, and then they pulled in the Special Enforcement Bureau came in onto the scene, and that's their, I guess it's called a bobcat, but
Bearcat.
A Bearcat, and that thing is so highly fortified to withstand bullets. And we're looking at the car, you can see, I mean, riddled with bullet holes.
That windshield completely.
Oh, look at the back windshield, the side passenger, the back seat passenger windshield. So, and we know that. I mean, there was a dramatic ending to this police pursuit, and one that we don't usually see like this.
Yeah, this is like something out of a law enforcement show, you know, that you'd see at prime time. But they are a second and a third.
Wow, okay. Major
Chris?
reinforcements. Yeah, well, Chris Christie,
Icon Echo.
Yeah, we're seeing more reinforcements coming onto the scene.
We've got a number of personnel now joining forces here. We've got a second Bearcat, a third Bearcat, and the bomb squad. Now, the bomb squad may just be here as a precaution, but they have now arrived on scene as well. We were looking through the rear window there just a second ago, and I want to go back to something that I said a little bit earlier in our coverage, that it didn't look like there was anybody else in the back seat, and that may, in fact, be the case, but I don't think we can confirm that just yet. I don't think we have any clear confirmation on whether there was anybody else inside that passenger. Certainly under these circumstances, once those bullets went flying through that rear windshield and basically right through the back seat there, just really hard to tell whether anybody else may have been inside that vehicle, maybe in the back seat. So we'll wait for further confirmation as to a total number of people in there. As far as we can tell, though, at this point, we've got a driver who has surrendered and a passenger in the front passenger seat who has been struck. That is the passenger who at one point put his head out the window in the middle of the pursuit towards the end before this car came to a stop, and then pointed a very long revolver in the direction of law enforcement officers and opened fire. Looked almost like a Desert Eagle, but by my estimation, but a large revolver nonetheless. And just a dramatic scene here, and as you could tell, with now additional SEB units arriving on scene here, this may be a situation, as it was mentioned earlier, not only will they box him in and approach him hood to hood from, head to head through the front of the vehicle, but they may box him in from all angles just to be on the safe side. There's another bomb squad, so we've got 2 bomb squad units and a drone that is now about to be dispatched over to the vehicle. We don't see this very often. We know that Orange County has used this multiple times in recent memory. I have not seen LA County. I know they've had one for several months now, but they have a fleet of drones at their disposal. But now LA County Sheriff, for the first time I think that can remember, is now about to use a drone, I think, to maybe do an orbit around the car and peer into that passenger seat.
for them because, it saves lives, it saves the canine units, and to be able to look into that window would be so helpful to these officers.
Yeah, well, let's bring Bruce Thomas back in, the law enforcement expert. Bruce, we know you're retired law enforcement. Incredible to have this resource of a drone.
Yeah, very much so. The drone is a new tool that law enforcement's using. The fire department has had it for a little bit in some of the wildfires to surveil the scene where helicopters can't get in. But in this case, the drone, they can actually fly it right up to looks like a Toyota Prius, look inside, have a real-time feed, real-time information to the officers back at the command post vehicle, that white, looks like some sort of caravan. The bomb squad's there as a precautionary measure also, just in case they do feel they need to clear the vehicle. SEB, like Chris was saying, multiple vehicles have shown up. Ultimately, they're going to have to box this vehicle in from the front and the rear, and then tactically they'll have to formulate the plan, which they're doing now, and which they trained for, and then approach the vehicle.
Right, and they must not have gotten the keys from that driver when she surrendered. She was probably just in a panic and getting out of that vehicle.
Yeah, in this case, it looks like a newer Prius, so there may not be keys involved. It may just be a fob of some sort and a press-button ignition. That's all conjecture on my part, but it does seem that might be the issue.
Good point there.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's just incredible to see what's good. The amount of people there, the amount of law enforcement there.
I don't think we've seen quite this amount of the police presence.
Think of the San Bernardino shooting.
If you as he zooms out, you'll see there's much more than what you're looking at right now. And just getting into position, I suppose.
Yeah.
What?
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I wasn't sure if my mic was up, but I was just going to say that it does sound like from scanner traffic here that the female driver is cooperating and giving some valuable information to law enforcement. Also, we have another observation, a report from the ground that there is indeed movement still at this moment, still coming from that passenger seat. So it does sound like the passenger is severely injured, but is still moving in the passenger seat as we speak.
So, yeah, and the time is of the essence here. Like, if he is bleeding, he could, who knows what will happen. But the sooner this ends, the sooner they can get the suspect into the hospital if they need to or whatever they need to do. But
the big scary part about it is if there's a gun in that car and and this person is not afraid to use it. So it's a very delicate and tricky situation to try to get this person out of the vehicle, because it's not like the normal one where they open the door and just give themselves up.
And we're talking about a possible murder suspect here. This started in Downey, and Bell Garden Police and LA County Sheriff's Department started chasing these two people in this Prius. And we saw the driver get out of the car with her hands up. This passenger remains in there, but we did see him stick his half his body out the window and shoot at officers. So this is someone who is not afraid to die, and he's not afraid to shoot at officers. So they need to be very careful.
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And Bruce Thomas, you're also on the phone with us. Again, when you're watching the amount of steps being taken to try to get this person out of the vehicle, what is it that you're thinking that's going through these law enforcement minds right now?
Well, there is an incident commander or a supervisor on scene, and they're requesting additional resources as needed. You have, it looks like the City of Commerce sheriffs are there, maybe East LA. You do have some other outside agencies, Downey, but when SEB rolls, they roll with multiple vehicles, multiple tactical vehicles. So there is a large law enforcement footprint at this for obvious reasons, because it's necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a very delicate situation, and obviously these law enforcement officers all know that their lives are at stake because this person has no problem pulling out that weapon and using it.
Yeah, the other thing, if I can just add, is time is on the side of law enforcement. There's no rush to get into this vehicle and to the suspect. They'll render it safe for officers to do so. But at this point, they probably will launch the drone to get an observation of what's going on. and they're formulating a tactical plan.
And
It
Bruce,
looks like they're going to move the other Bearcat up now
Yeah,
to
there's two
possibly
more.
box the Prius in.
So they will box that car in, perhaps get the drone and be able to get a good look at the suspect. And you saw, I think there was two more Bearcats, and there comes a robot too. Wow, they're pulling out everything today, and this is quite a sight.
Yeah, it's nice to have these kind of assets and resources, and when you have them, you use them. They train for these type of scenarios, so this is just an exercise that is real life.
We're seeing the drone flashing the lights, so they're about to use that as well. Hopefully they'll get their answers soon.
And you also know it's interesting that, after any sort of, Bruce, you obviously can weigh in on this one, but after any sort of incident, especially something as dramatic as this, law enforcement take this as a study, and then they sort of debrief on this and see what did they do right, what could have been done better. I mean, this really, they're doing it. They're very methodical with how they're going to get this person out of the vehicle.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's called a tactical hot wash or a tactical debriefing, where everybody weighs in and they critique themselves. And sometimes law enforcement, and having been a part of these briefings, we're a little harder on ourselves than we need to be, but we need to make sure we do it right.
Yeah, exactly, because you never know when the next time will happen when they need to do exactly this thing.
Right. You see those two Bearcats, though. They are, as we were talking about it, boxing this Prius in. I'm not sure if they're going to go behind it, but they're getting a good vantage point to see if that suspect is, in fact, incapacitated so much that they cannot move. They're, to actually get out of the car.
Look how close they are to that vehicle.
Yeah, they're, right up next to it.
You see the back windshield there blown out, and I think the back passenger window as well.
So they're making their move. They're going to get a really close-up glimpse, as you can see, obviously, to tell what the condition is of that passenger. And I can't imagine it'll be too much longer before they actually extricate him. Just based on the proximity at this point, there's really nowhere for that vehicle to go, and they've ensured that if there was any question of that, they're now completely boxing him in with guns trained from all angles. And now officers, for the first time, able to get a really, really up-close look. Using those Bearcats, they could look right through their own bulletproof glass and make sure that that passenger, or decide whether he's still a threat or not. Again, they have brought in a number of tools, lots of technology showing up for the termination of this wild pursuit and a shootout here in Vernon this afternoon. Again, this all started as a pursuit out of the city of Downey. Downey police pursuing that Prius with two murder suspects on board through the streets of Downey, ending here at Downey and Bandini. A female passenger surrendering shortly after shots were fired, but it does look like there is a passenger who has been severely injured by gunfire inside the car still, and now it's just a matter of time, and I can't imagine it'll be too much longer before they finally bring this to a conclusion. But what a dramatic scene when you look at this shot right there. Look at this picture. Look at the number of officers that have been brought in from a number of different jurisdictions, predominantly LA County Sheriff's Office at this point. The number of resources, you notice the bomb squad, also the drone actually, I noticed a minute ago, the side of that drone actually said fire rescue, so they may be borrowing this drone for this purpose here. Here it is. It's now about to take off, and now they will be flying that drone over that Toyota Prius here, I would imagine, in just a few seconds as well. So just an incredible sight here following a very dramatic afternoon. The best news, though, have to reiterate, nobody else has been hurt. No innocent civilians have been hurt. No deputies have been injured. And you've got to give it up once this is all over here. Just tremendous props to law enforcement under what is nothing less than a terrifying situation.
It's a miracle, actually, that no one's hurt, because they were in traffic when he was shooting out the window.
And then all those cars. It is amazing that none of the other civilians were caught in any of the crossfire.
But they certainly are getting a close-up look at that car right there. from the front and the side. Yeah.
You see the law enforcement really almost pressing their face against the glass just to get a gauge of what that suspect is doing. But to see them pulling out that drone and knowing that it's going to lift off. Yeah, well, Chris, we're hearing you. But yeah, it's amazing to see all, like I think Bruce Thomas said, all the assets that they have. They're pulling in that robot, they're bringing in the drone, they're bringing in these Bearcats, they're bringing in so many of their resources. Bruce, I think you're still with us, but I mean, it's incredible to see this.
Yeah, Colleen and Ellen, what you're also seeing is the Special Enforcement Bureau, they have deputies, cross-trained paramedics. So what we're not seeing in the picture right now is the LA County Fire Department. And that's because the scene is so fluid, so dangerous, that they are staged further back. So the paramedics, deputies, will render as much aid as they can to the suspect, even though he has been assaultive and high risk towards them.
Right. That's the amazing job that these officers do. And to watch this police presence and then an officer's presence, it's just incredible sight there to see. And that man in the turret there, he's been standing at attention for the last half hour or so.
Seems like it. And it shows you it is like a family, law enforcement as well, Bruce, because to see, you hear about some people saying that, not all the jurisdictions work together, but when push comes to shove, they're all right there and trying to make sure that they've got their partners back, so to say.
Yeah, the other thing, too, is the LA County Sheriff's Department Special Enforcement Bureau is the lead agency in training other tactical agencies, even such as the FBI, Secret Service. They've worked with them. So most of these other smaller agencies do have tactical teams, but they're versed in the training of the SEB deputies.
Interesting. So all SEB are trained as paramedics as well, or just a few of them?
A few of them are cross-trained, but they have that dual role.
Just in case of situations like this where the fire department can't get in.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, and it can't be a huge department, the SEB or Special Enforcement Bureau. They are specialized, so it's amazing to see all of them there ready to respond. Or do you think some of them may have had their day off and they were called in to respond?
It's a combination of both. There are various teams, and I'm not going to get into numbers for obvious reasons, but there are teams that are on standby, on call 24 hours. And if something like the North Hollywood bank shootout years ago were to take place, God forbid, they would call everybody in from home. They're basically on call 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Love to be know what's happening inside that car.
Go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, we're getting word now that there are a number of detectives and the officers involved in investigating a liquor store robbery just a few nights ago. Tuesday night, you'll remember that an owner of a liquor store in Downey was shot and killed on Paramount Boulevard. Now, there's no confirmation yet whether these are those suspects, but we're now being told that those detectives are now arriving on scene under that suspicion, the possibility that this may very well be related to that homicide, and whether the suspect in that car may indeed match the description of the suspect that was caught on surveillance video just a few nights ago. Again, that was Tuesday night, that robbery in Downey, and now it looks like there may be some consideration as to whether there is a relationship to that murder. So that's some new information that we're getting here coming from our assignment desk.
Well, it was very interesting to see. I know that was breaking news coming into the Eyewitness Newsroom yesterday. I think that happened at the ASL liquor store. But I think the victim's name was Gurpreet Singh, and I think he was 42 years old, and you saw a video of him with this little toddler. A lot of people were really upset over this. It was really a callous murder. It looked like the suspect just went in, opened fire, and left. And he was a veteran, a father, and a lot of an outpouring of people sort of really shocked by what had happened. So it would be, justice served if this is the suspect, and they take him into custody. And really good police work by the detectives if they could have linked it, and then they started following him because it's been since Tuesday night. But
and we did hear that these were wanted murder suspects or possible murder suspects,
Right.
so it would make sense.
yeah, it really was. It was sad to see. But again, we're trying to see if they're going to be able to extricate this person out of the vehicle here.
It looks like there's still movement coming from the vehicle. They obviously have very good eyes on him at this point, and some indication that this is still a standoff and he is very much alive is the fact that crisis negotiators have now arrived on scene here. Additional crisis negotiators were dispatched just in the last 20 minutes and have now arrived on scene as well. So again, I think that lends credence to the possibility that he may very well still be alive and breathing.
And this guy is going to be going away for a long, long time, so he's probably not in a big rush if he is indeed, with a standoff situation that we're talking about here. Is someone who's a murder suspect, someone who's shot at officers. And
has a gun in that car.
Yeah, exactly.
A big gun in that car.
And he's lost his driver, partner, and who knows what he's talking about.
Exactly. No kidding. I think, was that Bruce saying something? Go ahead, Bruce.
And also, if their 7 HD can pull out a little bit, you'll see the posture of the officers is a little more, I hate to use the word relaxed, but not as fluid, dangerous situation, because there seems to be in a more waiting game right now.
Okay, well, that'll
Did
be...
you say waiting game, Bruce? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yes, at this point, SEP has control of it. It looks like they may deploy sort of telephone, proceed and hear the crisis negotiating team deputies to see if the suspect can talk to them.
Yeah. It's so hard to make out.
Yeah, it really is.
Being inside that vehicle. At one point, you could see that suspect. Did you remember seeing? You could see the suspect's face, like it was just looked like they were sleeping almost, turned to the side and looking out their window.
It's really hard to see inside there.
I hope there's nobody in that back seat though, because
Yeah.
it wouldn't be a very good
No. So that-
situation.
Chris?
Yeah, certainly hope so, for obvious reasons. One thing that we can show you to kind of give you a comparison of the suspect who was leaning out of the window shooting at officers, we now have some video and some freeze frames from the surveillance video of that homicide in Downey just a few nights ago that we could pop up there, and you can kind of see the similarities between those two, and obviously the size and description of the weapon used looks very similar. Just from a cursory glance at both of these shots here. So obviously law enforcement looking at that same evidence and trying to figure out, again, what the connection is and whether the evidence is stacking up or pointing into the direction of the possibility that this, again, may be the same suspect involved in that liquor store robbery. So I think it's very interesting when we look at it now that we've pulled around the driver's side of that Prius. The posture amongst those SEB units right here really has not changed. They're still remaining inside the vehicle there. They're not making any moves, and you have to wonder what they're seeing that's preventing them from taking their next steps. Obviously, they're communicating with other commanders back at the command post and relaying information as to what they're seeing or hearing on the scene down there and strategizing what that next move is going to be here. But when you look at the situation, you've got to imagine that they see something that is still very much of concern, whether it's a threat coming from that suspect, whether he's moving around, or whether they're just taking their time and taking every last precaution to make sure when they do make their move that they are not in danger in doing so, because at some point they're going to have to open up that either the passenger door or go through the driver's side and physically remove either a live suspect or a dead suspect. One way or the other is going to have to come out of that vehicle.
Exactly, and it's interesting to see that video from Tuesday night, and we have a freeze frame of this particular suspect in the car with his head out the window and shooting at officers, and you can sort of see.
Yes. And then the gun. The gun looks like
similar.
It's very similar to the gun when you see.
Oh,
what
okay.
was that?
What was that?
Let's get Bruce back in here. Bruce, what are they doing?
It looks like they're deploying some sort of diversionary device to see if they can get the suspect to react in some way, maybe some sort of concussion grenade. But it looks like the plan is to deploy the canine on a long leash and have the canine go in there to deal with the suspect. As Chris was saying, the weapon the suspect has looks like it's probably a shot, maybe a Magnum revolver of some sort. And so if he fired all 6, he may be out of rounds, but it looks like they're going to deploy the canine to bring this to a resolute.
Wow, look at that dog, and I would not want that dog after me.
I know, but you hope that
Yeah,
suspect doesn't have a
once the
gun.
dog gets out of the car,
please.
work time. And this dog is fully in work mode right now.
Yeah, and Bruce, though, just out of curiosity, because we do have animal lovers who are watching. That suspect is armed. Obviously, we saw them as they are a murder suspect as well, possible. And we saw the video of maybe what they're accused of doing, and we saw with our own eyes what the suspect did with the gun during the chase. It seems like, sending in that dog is just it can't be taken very lightly, that decision.
No, but you got to remember the dog is a tool, and unfortunately, the dog's life is secondary to that of a trained police officer. The dogs also do have some sort of bulletproof protective vest on also.
Yes.
So sending the dog in is not taken lightly as a member of the law enforcement family.
Yeah, and we apologize for a little bit of a line problem with the phone, but we understand what you're saying. We're going to go to Chris, and Chris, there you see that canine on standby there with that long leash. What else you see?
Yeah, I would imagine, as Bruce was saying, that tear gas or whatever chemical was used in that situation as a diversionary tactic, purely to see how the suspect reacts. At this point, they want to see does it affect his movement? What is his reflex? What's his reaction to that? To see to try and prompt some movement. And then the next step, once that dust settles, if you will, we have watched them leash up that canine in the last few minutes. We actually watched as that was happening. You can see that's got to be about a 40-foot, maybe 30-foot leash that they will, once they're comfortable, they will let the dog approach the vehicle, and that'll be the next step. And at some point, the determination will be made that the suspect is either he's alive or he's dead. That's the next step, I think.
Yeah, because if you don't flinch when that dog comes at you, then you're incapacitated because.
Right. Exactly.
That's.
Yeah. I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, sometimes they use the tear gas and they'll deploy that, and then they'll immediately rush in and take out a suspect, whether it's in a structure or even in a car. But in this case, they deployed it, and now the situation once again is static. So now that was step one. We'll see what Plan B is. I would imagine here in the next couple of minutes.
Right, it'll be very interesting to see what happens when that dog approaches the vehicle, and then perhaps they can ascertain if he's going to be a suspect that they can just drag out of that car, or if they're going to have to continue the standoff situation.
Yes, absolutely, and you can see that canine very anxious. We saw it once that tear gas or canister went off. The dog became very animated and very anxious to do what he's trained to do. As Bruce mentioned, these are not pets by any means. And as you know, Colleen, the capabilities of that dog right there is really, really, really something. When you look at the training that those dogs go through and the things that they are able to train them to do are nothing less than impressive.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Chris. But I just, just as someone who grew up with one as their dog, they're a member of our family as well. But they really are incredibly. They're so well trained, and they really want to do. They're workers. They live to work, and you can clearly see it by. I believe this is probably a Belgian Malinois, but they are absolutely trained to work, and that is what they want to do.
We'll try to come around here and maybe come up. If we can come up and maybe look through the front windshield, John, that might be another angle of see if we could see any more movement, any sign of movement whatsoever coming from that passenger seat. Because from my vantage point, I do not see any movement whatsoever. I think I see arms. I have not seen them move. But it's just a little bit too tough to tell. Obviously, the distance, we don't want to push in too close, and obviously the little bit of glare there as well, depending on the angle here. So they obviously have a much better view down there than we do. You can see it almost looks like, I'm trying to see, is that just more, I guess there's some more, are those bullet holes in the front? Yeah, more bullet holes in the front windshield. I didn't see those earlier. Yeah, but it looks like some of those shots went right through the rear windshield and ended up exiting through the front windshield. Those would be exit holes in that front windshield. So just more evidence of what a dramatic and violent scene transpired here, maybe about an hour ago.
It's been an incredible view there. We have breaking news in Vernon. I'm Ellen Leva along with David Ono. We've been watching this for about an hour or so. A passenger opens fire on police during a high-speed pursuit, and then the police return fire, hitting that gunman, and innocent drivers were nearby. But now we're watching the conclusion of this, and it has been like this for the last 45 minutes.
Incredibly shocking to watch. First the pursuit, then the gunfire, and gunfire going on with innocent bystanders nearby, back and forth. We did see one person get out of the vehicle, a female who appeared to be driving this car. She did have blood on her. She may have been shot, but she did give up right after the initial shooting. The other person, the suspect, the man seen leaning out of the car with a large handgun, he is still inside that vehicle. You're watching things set up. We have 3 Bearcats from the LA Special Enforcement Bureau, LA County Sheriff's Special Enforcement Bureau that are set up there, 2 right by the car in question, 1 behind it there. They've brought in a robot. We've seen the canine units. We've seen a drone being set up as well. It's an incredible scene as they try to figure out what the next approach will be when it comes to this murder suspect that is inside the vehicle. Clearly, he has been hit. Clearly, he is injured. We don't even know if he's alive yet. This is something that we have been on for quite some time. Chris Christie, Air 7 HD, has been over it as well, watching this shocking scene. Chris, it's 4 o'clock. People are just tuning in. Give us a lowdown of what this experience has been for you.
As you mentioned, David, nothing less than a dramatic response here from law enforcement, a large response, and well-warranted at that. Following a dramatic shootout this afternoon, a number of resources now in place from different agencies, including Downey Police Department, the LA County Sheriff's Department, Bell Gardens, all out here, and the SEB units from the County Sheriff's Office now on scene here with that Toyota Prius clearly boxed in after the female driver of that pursuit vehicle gave herself up. Shots were fired during this pursuit, and it does appear that the passenger is still in the passenger seat, not moving from our vantage point. Does appear to be severely injured. We've seen a flashbang go off to see if he reacts to that. We've seen canine units standing by, as you mentioned, David, and we saw just a few moments ago, and now a bomb squad robot approaching the car with a camera on board to get another glimpse from a different angle, in addition to the 2 SEB Bearcat tanks that are literally right up against the passenger side and the front hood of that Toyota Prius. So lots of law enforcement and a lot of law enforcement skills being put to the test here this afternoon. We can now tell you with a little bit more confidence, without 100% confirmation, they are looking very, very closely at the distinct possibility and now probability that this is directly related to a liquor store robbery, David and Colleen, that happened just a few nights ago. Remember, Tuesday night, that ASL liquor store on Paramount Boulevard in Downey, where the owner was shot and killed. Well, the description of that suspect and now the surveillance video that we're able to show you does appear to match pretty closely to the suspect who's believed to be in that Toyota Prius. So detectives from that case are on scene down here and trying to connect those dots and confirm whether this is indeed the same murder suspect from Tuesday night.
Should know very momentarily because we're watching this robot inch right up next to that car.
That murder is something that we have been on top of for the last few days. It was shocking in itself because at first We told you about the murder. We showed you surveillance video on the first day of the murder. We showed you surveillance video that you just showed, Chris, of the gunman running in from the street level. There it is. He runs in. He's in there for a matter of seconds. If you continue to watch that video, there was a man that walked out of the convenience store, clearly heard the gunshots and went running. He left. He got out safely, but the clerk was killed. It took a matter of seconds. And then the next day is when we got the surveillance video up close. We showed his face. There it is. We showed the long handgun, and it reminded us all of how fragile life is, how this guy just wandered in there in a matter of seconds. He took somebody's life. It was an absolutely shocking thing to witness. And now it makes all the sense in the world when we see this pursuit going on.
Right, and Downey police after him, and we saw the shots fired outside of that car, and you can see this screen grab right there, but also we have one from today, him hanging outside the door.
So take a look at that gun, the unusually long barrel, and it appears that he is using the same gun today. So that was the gun. It was most notable, besides the fact you could see his face clear as day, but was most notable about this particular murder was the size of his gun, and then we saw him leaning out the window with a huge handgun, and it's a likelihood it's the same one.
And hopefully we'll be able to show you that screenshot from a little earlier today, because he did just hang out the window, shots fired at the officers, and disregard for everybody around there. There were people just driving right next to him.
We're going to have that soon. A lot more to talk about. Well, let's go to Miriam Hernandez, who is on the ground near where this is all going on. Miriam?
That's right. It is a very chaotic scene, but from where we are, just south of where all the armored vehicles and the police cars are assembled, we can see a clear view of that Prius. We can see that front door open, and my cameraman, Chester Finney, says he can see the robot. So it is a bit of distance away, but we are able to monitor what's going on and what is not going on there. I have not seen any motion inside, but as you have reported from the air, there have been reports that the gunman, has been moving. A number of cars have been surrounding this area, and we've seen emergency vehicles come and go. For a time, it looked like a number of officers were sort of on the retreat, backing off from the scene. We don't know yet what their next step will be. We were here when that very loud percussion grenade, that flashbang went off to distract the gunman, to possibly divert the gunman's attention while some other maneuver went underway. We are in a very, very isolated part of Vernon, all industrial, as you know. So we're near the railroad tracks and a number of warehouses. That's a very fortunate situation for the for SWAT, for the people trying to take down this armed individual. It means that there aren't any civilians in the area that could be possibly hurt. So we're just waiting, watching. We see all the lights from all the police cars. We are watching that car very closely. Of course, you know, the gunman has demonstrated already that there is a reckless disregard for life, firing out of that car multiple times. And they are likely talking to that passenger who surrendered to find out whether there is any way she can perhaps persuade the gunman to give up. Don't know the condition of the gunman, though. Don't know what's going on. Has he been hit? Because there was an exchange of gunfire with pursuing police officers. And of course, the whole reason this started was because of Downey officers believing that this person was fleeing, this person being a murder suspect. So a lot of details still to be filled in as we watch and wait here in the city of Vernon. That's it from the ground right now. Back to you.
All right. Miriam, thank you. Another big question to be answered. The woman that was driving this vehicle today, who was given up, she's in custody. It looked as if she was hit, but we don't know for sure. She did have blood on her, but it could be the guy in the passenger seat who bled on her. Nevertheless, the question remains, was she part of that murder that was on the video? Because according to some witness accounts, the gunman may have been dropped off by somebody waiting in a vehicle. He jumped out, The murder took place. He jumped back in the car and it took off. Was she the driver? And perhaps that might have been part of the motivation for her to continue to flee from police as well. Could she have been part of that murder?
And we do understand that she is cooperating with the officers now after she surrendered, so that remains to be seen. But now that we see that robot again getting another shot, going up on that curb. And
there is, as we have been talking about, part of the conversation is he has been seen to be moving every now and then. So there's concern that he still could be dangerous, and that's why the long delay. Bruce Thomas is on the line with us as well, our law enforcement expert. Bruce, you've been watching all of this. You've seen the video from that murder that took place earlier this week. All of this has been so shocking, and it's come to this shocking culmination here. What are your thoughts as you watch all of this come together?
Well, the first thing, like Chris Christie set up in Air 7 HD, is it appears with almost 100% probability this is the suspect involved in that murder. The weapon is way too similar, and it's a weapon you don't see very often. The tragic part is it was a robbery that didn't have to go into a murder by this suspect. But what you're seeing now is they're using the robot to get a better sense of what is going on in that vehicle. And ultimately, SEB is going to have to approach. They're going to have to drag this suspect out and render aid. There seems to be no other way to get him out as he's that incapacitated.
Right. We want to put back that picture that we just had, the side-by-side, if you can, when we show the gunman from the other night, Tuesday, and then the one just from earlier today. And there you see, from the passenger side, that gun, very similar length.
The long barrel sticking out there, and then on the right-hand side, that's from the surveillance camera from inside the convenience store where the murder took place. So they're both silver, very bright, very long barrel. And as Bruce just said, it's a unique weapon you don't see very often.
And look how close that shooting occurred to just people that were just driving on the road.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to Bruce about that, because when you see the video, this is such a dangerous situation for law enforcement to be tangled up in. And you could tell they're trying to adjust where they're taking their shots from, because there are innocent bystanders right in front of this vehicle and also to the right. And you see them, Bruce, adjust to the right-hand side of the passenger side of their vehicle to change the projection of the angle of their firing.
Yeah, David, this is probably one of the worst-case scenarios for a law enforcement officer because you have a background. We take into account what we're firing at. In this case, they're firing at a vehicle, but there's innocent civilians in that fire range. It does look like there was some truck in front, so the rounds hopefully weren't going to go anywhere, but it's just a dangerous and bad situation. But the officer in this case has to return fire for his own safety.
Yeah, what a frightening situation to be in. And luckily, from what we understand, nobody else got hit or hurt in that situation. But what a terrible situation to be in if you're law enforcement. You are in not only in a very stressful situation, somebody's actually shooting at you.
Right.
You have to think about returning fire, but you have to do it in a safe way to where nobody else is hit. It's kind of a mind-boggling responsibility to have, and especially if you know that you were dealing with this suspect who may be some kind of a professional hitman. I mean, that's what it almost looks like, and that could be a possibility here. Was this a hit? Because he just ran in, he killed the guy, and he left.
And the car right behind the shooter, he or she managed to somehow just back away from that shooting incident. But could you imagine, she pretty much stuck there right behind the shooter. And in the video, you'll see that this car just sort of, I guess that's reality in Los Angeles.
And as we look at that picture, okay, we're talking about now what you're seeing on the right-hand side of your screen is the live shot. There's a robot inspecting what's going on inside that Prius right now. On the left-hand side, it's a split screen. There you see the gunman from earlier this week inside a convenience store. You see that very long handgun that he is holding, and then you see a similar handgun sticking out of the Prius. This is actually where the shooting went down. You see the white truck we're talking about that was sitting in front of the vehicle. That was there as the shooting broke out. This vehicle behind it, that's a civilian vehicle. That's what you're talking about,
and it
right?
Just backs up away. If you could watch the video,
they had the wherewithal to hit reverse and get out of the way. Boy, what a situation to be in for everybody.
Exactly.
I was going to interject. The officer that was involved in that shooting, you could just see how his tactics were a mirror of his training. He got into the door jam of provided cover for him, and once he had fired enough rounds in that vehicle to sustain some sort of safety element for himself, he went back to the rear of the vehicle for additional cover. So
Right.
it just shows you how well versed and trained we are as law enforcement officers.
He was calm and cool. We'll see the video again eventually, but it was interesting to watch him because he did return fire, stood exactly where he was supposed to. And then he went to the back of the vehicle, he reloaded, and he tactically took different approaches with his partner. And here we go.
Here we go. You'll see this car right behind the shooter.
Okay, that's a civilian car to the left. Here is the officer. He comes out of his car. There he is in the door jam. And he starts firing into the vehicle. Luckily, the civilian car backs out of the way. Now he's going to go to the back of his car, right? Oh, he goes to the passenger side, excuse me. He takes a different approach, a different angle. He's reloading right now as we speak. He has a motor officer then move in, help him. He goes back to his back of his vehicle. He's going back and forth looking for a better angle. What a stressful
Incredible.
situation. Luckily, there are reinforcements there to help him out. But he was there by himself for a matter of a few seconds that could be deadly.
And there you see the back windshield is it right about now, I believe.
They've been shooting inside of it. Then it's going to shatter eventually. There you see her hands are now sticking out of the vehicle. That is the driver, who is the female. She's giving up. She's got her hands out of the vehicle, and she eventually will get out of the vehicle. She, it appears, was injured, but not incapacitated. So she wants out, and we don't know. That's where this thing has come to a halt. We never saw anything more from him. He was sitting in the passenger side window, and there you see that shot.
Incredible.
He's holding the handgun out of the window. What a situation to be in. Bystanders all over the place, but nobody got hurt.
And there we still see the robot is looking into that car, getting more information, and then the Bearcat's in the same position. That car's not going anywhere. I don't know if we're seeing any movement still, but they have to be cautious, and hopefully that robot will be able to give them a clear picture of his face and figure out who it is.
The robot has been there for quite some time. Perhaps it's just watching him and staying. Maybe they're going to keep it there so they can remotely watch him and see if he does have any movement at all while they try to figure out what to do. But they're handling this cautiously. We're kind of at a mode right now where some decisions have to be made on how to advance the situation. Doesn't look like he's moving. Now, we have this shot for you. We're not going to push in any further. We could, of course, but we don't want you to see something you shouldn't. But we're watching from our monitors here inside the studio as well. We can see a closer shot of it. We can see his arm. We can see his head turned to the right. He clearly is not moving, at least right now. But there is concern, though, that he could still be a threat.
And we saw a drone being used. We're not sure if they're actually going to take it to the car. Maybe they have a clear enough picture with that robot camera, but they brought everything out, including the drone. We saw 3 Bearcats. Look at all that. Look at all those officers.
Bruce, you're still with us. You have something to add?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you look to the rear of the 3rd Bearcat, the one not involved in the boxing in, you'll see deputies with white gloves. They possibly are paramedic cross-trained, but also they have a ballistic shield. So when they do make the approach, that ballistic shield will provide cover for the officers, because they are going to have to approach this vehicle at some point.
Right, and we have seen that in the past where their job is not just to take the suspect down or take the threat down, but they have to render aid as soon as they possibly can. And we've seen that over and over again. So they have 2 different modes that they have to take care of. So, and the folks that are going to be rendering the aid, Bruce, are they members of the SWAT team, or are they paramedics that go in with the SWAT team?
They may be SEB cross-trained paramedic deputies, or they may be tactical paramedic-trained deputies from the Commerce Station also. It's probably a combination of both. They may have not been on duty, but were called in after the fact.
Okay.
And we know officers and paramedics are cross-trained these days because of the active shooting, the rash of active shooters in the United States ever since Columbine on. When they changed the tactics in the old days, the paramedics sat back until the place was deemed clear, but you can't do that anymore. So they are all trained to render aid immediately and go in even though there's a threat still underway. There you see the Vernon Fire Department and the paramedics They are way outside the scene, but they're positioned in place, staged, and ready to go when called for. So there you see, it's a little bit of stretch, but they can get there in a matter of seconds when need be.
And fortunately, this is an industrial area, so minimal collateral damage could have been possible, but it's thankfully that there was no traffic around there, except for those few civilians that were parked right next to the shooting, and you really feel for them. But that was really smart thinking of that car to just back up away from the shooting.
No, you know,
it's incredible to see that.
Cool and collected,
Yeah.
and you never know how you're going to react in those situations, but kudos to that person and all the other civilians that were involved in that situation to not to panic and just to do the best they can to handle that situation.
Yeah. And our Chris Christie has been overhead of this like since 3 o'clock or before 3 o'clock.
Yeah, Ellen, it's been quite an afternoon and an extensive standoff here in Vernon. Again, we're looking and observing that robot, which approached the vehicle maybe about 20 minutes ago in the last 15, 20 minutes. And as it approached the vehicle, we really still did not see any more movement coming from that passenger seat, other than some very subtle movement. And I wonder if this is what they're seeing down there as well. Some very subtle movement by the suspect's right hand, and that could be an optical illusion from our vantage point. Certainly they have better eyes on it than we do. That robot certainly capable of delivering a cell phone, but there was no indication that a cell phone was dropped off or whether he reached. Nothing like that at all. So at this point, the camera on board that robot is observing the passenger seat, as are the officers in those two Bearcat units. At one point, just about 3 or 4 minutes ago, one of the drivers of the Bearcat on the top of your screen there, the one on the right, actually left the driver's seat, went to the back of the vehicle to retrieve something, and is now back in the front seat. So I'd be curious what Bruce thinks may be going on at this point. We've now seen a flashbang go off. We've seen canines in position. Obviously, that drone has not been used yet. The robot is maintaining a pretty close proximity here with the camera trained squarely on that passenger seat. And then that third crew now waiting to approach the Prius with shields and long weapons as well. So I wonder at this point, what more do they need at this point to go in there, whether through the passenger or driver side, and make their move? What would be taking place in those Bearcats right now?
Would you like to address that? Oh, Bruce, would you care to answer Chris's question, or can you hear me, Bruce? All right, we might have lost
One more
him.
time, please.
Oh, there you go. Bruce, we're just wondering, what else do they need now at this point? What are they looking for in order to make that decision to finally go in and get to the suspect?
Well, what they're looking for is to see if the suspect is incapacitated to the point where he cannot reach the weapon that he had. I believe, as Christie said, that he is incapacitated and he cannot do any of the verbal commands that they're asking him to do. So at this point, they're just saying, okay, how are we going to do this? Tactically, how are we going to approach the vehicle? And which way are we going to take the suspect out? You've got him boxed in on the passenger side, so they're going to have to go in through the driver's side or move one of the Bearcats to get to him and get him out of the vehicle. But also, there is a loaded weapon in that vehicle.
Careful for, because we've seen that weapon perhaps twice this week. We're not exactly sure, but we're speculating.
Wow, this is turned out to be quite a story that has been going on for a few days here in Southern California, culminating in this incredible pursuit, violent and with a shootout. And this suspect, though, seeing that surveillance video at the convenience store scared everybody.
Yeah.
Because it looked like he had one sole intention, and that was to run in as quickly as possible, kill somebody, and leave. He didn't steal anything. He just went in there with the sole intention of shooting the clerk behind the desk and then get out of there as quickly as possible.
And that unique gun that you don't see very often.
Using that highly unique gun. So the robot is on the move again. They're moving it back a little bit. So let's see what is going to happen next.
And we can check in with Miriam Hernandez as we look at this live picture. Miriam?
Yes, we're looking at that robot too. We can see one arm swinging down, it's swinging around. You can see it here just to the left of your screen near the front left wheel of that Prius. So it is positioning for some reason, and we'll just have to be watching to see what happens next as officers get a read on the position of that person with a gun inside. We also have not seen any movement inside the car as well. And to respond to David's comment about rendering aid, we have an ambulance right next to our truck here, just about 25 feet away, waiting to zip in if there should be any gunfire. But I have noticed that a number of police officers have made their way towards the rear of this phalanx of police vehicles. There goes another flashbang.
Yeah, they just set off a flashbang, Miriam, right in the back of the vehicle. Clearly, that's why they moved the robot to get it away a little bit, setting up another flashbang. We'll bring in Bruce Thomas now to get his thoughts on this. Perhaps they're trying to see if there's any startling or movement from the suspect that's sitting in that passenger seat. Bruce, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a distractionary device to see if they can get any movement. Another thing which they may be waiting on, with the officer-involved shooting that occurred, there may have been some airbag deployments, and which will complicate getting to the suspect in that vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought I did see. Go ahead, Miriam.
Close. Yes, we see that robot now just appears to be peering into that car now, getting a closer look of the individual inside. Now it's moving back slightly. These officers have all the time in the world to examine this car as long as they can stay out of the line of fire and ensure that nobody else gets hurt. There's no reason at all to rush in and try and take this person down. So they're using their time gathering intelligence, gathering as much information as possible before they move. But I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, you can see them from the air shot as well. All the different cars that are there standing by. On our side, we have emergency vehicles waiting to go in if needed. But right now, everything still seems very still, waiting and watching to see what information comes through that robot and whether that suspect is showing any signs of life. Whether, of course, we know that if there is any strength at all in a desperate person with a gun, they can use their last ounce of energy to fire that shot. It's why when officers take down a suspect, they go to immobilize him or her. They want to make sure that that person cannot get off another shot and hitting an innocent person or a law enforcement officer. So it's extremely important to make sure that person is absolutely not going to move, not going to be able to get that gun and fire back. That's... Go ahead.
I was just going to imagine that that camera from the robot should be able to tell if the man moved even an inch or flinched. They could compare pictures, and if that hand, what do they call them? The thing to make them flinch.
Oh, the
spacing out for
flashbang grenade?
Yeah, yes, thank you. It'll be able to see if he flinched at all or moved.
They also have eyeballs on them. They have men or individuals in both Bearcats that are sitting there watching the suspect. There may be some things in the way, and as Bruce pointed out, there may be some airbag situations too from the bullets that went through there. Could have set off the airbags, which could hinder a little bit of that, but I'm sure they're watching from whatever viewpoints that they can get. So we have somebody in the Bearcat in the front, one in the side, and then the robot as well. So when they set that flashbang off, they're probably all watching the best they can to see if there's any kind of flinching from the suspect at all.
And that must have been the white movement, the paper that we thought was paper at the time. That must have been the airbag.
But, Miriam is making a good point, and that is they do have all the time in the world. All it takes is one bullet. If he just has to pull his trigger finger.
Right.
And one more bullet, and that's a sizable gun. It might be capable of penetrating more than a regular handgun. So they have to be cognizant of that as well. So they're being extremely cautious here, but for good reason, because if this is the person they think it is, he has killed before.
Crazy.
All right, Bruce. Now the camera is looking into the back seat, it looks like, of that car. What are your thoughts?
You know, they're just trying to get vantage points to see what's going on. Like Miriam said, there's no rush to deal with this problem. Time is on the side of law enforcement, and I know people get very frustrated, but we do everything by the numbers.
Of course, officer safety is number one.
So here we are.
Very much so.
We are approaching 4:30 in the afternoon. This is a pursuit that broke out around 3 o'clock or so,
Right.
and that's when we jumped on it, and it was an incredible pursuit.
Began in Downey, and this passenger the passenger had the gun. The driver eventually surrendered. But multiple police officers were opening fire. It started in Downey, then Bell Garden Police entered, and the LA County Sheriff's Department entered. And it's a possible murder suspect, obviously, and a very dangerous man. But we did see a woman get out of the vehicle, the driver, and surrender. And now it's just the passenger in that car right now.
Yeah, some really dramatic moments. Not just when he was, but the pursuit was dramatic enough.
Yeah.
But when when the passenger started hanging out the window with his giant handgun, that was like surreal. It was unbelievable.
You don't see that very often during the pursuit. Then
Firing at officers. So officers had to return fire. The Downey Police Department started to pull him over because they felt that this might be the suspect in that high-profile murder that took place at a convenience store, where the suspect was seen on surveillance camera running into the convenience store. In a matter of seconds, he shot the clerk down and ran back out and took off. It's off camera when he runs into the convenience store if he was dropped off or somebody was waiting for him in a car, but it's speculated that somebody might have been waiting for him, and he just jumped right back in and took off. Was this the woman who was driving this vehicle? We don't know yet, but there's a distinct possibility that that was the case. So this is what we're dealing with. The suspect now in the passenger seat. He has been still for quite some time after a volley of gunfire that went into this Prius. The woman got out. She was able to walk out of the Prius after the shooting and surrender. The robot is on the move again, but the suspect has not moved.
See that camera backing up? Perhaps they'll do another flash bang. Who knows what they're going to do next? But they have to just.
I think they're going to try to get it up on the curb, because you notice its treads lifted up. So I think he's going to try to turn it and put it up on the curb and get a better look from the previous angle that it had, just right by the open driver's door. So I think they're going to try to line that up and get one more look inside.
And this is all. Yeah, fortunately, this is all happening in Vernon, where there's little traffic and just an industrial area. So that is, thankfully, that's one thing that's in their favor.
So there you see the SEB, Special Enforcement Bureau, that is with the Sheriff's Department, that is set up in the third Bearcat on the right-hand side. They're just staged, ready to go. They're waiting for the word and when to go in. And then that's when you'll probably see them move forward and check on that suspect. There are individuals in the other two Bearcats as well, looking directly into the vehicle, watching him carefully to see if there's any movement at all. 2 flashbangs we've heard go off. One just recently, a matter of a couple of minutes ago. We don't know what the results of that were, if it was any movement at all from the suspect that's in that passenger side seat up front. And the K9 units are ready to go as well.
And they've had the drone and also the robot. And we're going to perhaps, there we go, show you this moment where the shooting began. You see the officer jump out of his car right there, right behind his door. And that you see the civilian car back up away, and those shots are fired from that Prius.
Now, those shots are coming from the police officer shooting into the Prius. And you notice he's directing his gunfire towards the passenger side. There you see the driver then trying to give up, but there's still gunfire going into the vehicle. but they can't see the driver's side. They can't see her hand sticking out of the vehicle. Then she's back, and she's probably getting down because the gunfire is coming into both sides of the car now. And these officers are on the right-hand side of this patrol unit, taking an angle that won't hit bystanders, because if they stay directly behind the car, it could go directly into the truck that was in front of the Prius. Now, her hands are out. She's giving up. You notice no movement from the passenger side, but the driver's side, her hands are up. That is a female who was driving the vehicle, trying to get away from the police. She eventually got out of the car, walked out, was able to walk out on her own, back up, and they took her into custody. She did have blood on her arm, her legs, her feet.
We don't know if she was actually shot or that's from the passenger suspect. We don't know exactly what condition she is, but she seemed to be walking fine.
So since then, obviously the civilians have gotten out of the way. We've moved Bearcats up. 3 Bearcats have arrived on the scene from the Special Enforcement Bureau with the Sheriff's Department. 2 of them have gathered around the car, and 1 is sitting in the back right there as a stage and prepare to move in on the suspect.
And those Bearcats have been there for about 40 minutes now surrounding that car. And there is a 3rd one you can see on the right-hand side of your screen ready to go in as well. The robot camera seems to be further away now. Maybe it's done its job, and I believe we'll hear soon the condition of the suspect.
Yeah, the robot is back
Oh,
with.
David, what I was going to interject was what you've seen is they have taken all regular personnel, as we'll call them, out of the operating area, and they've all been replaced by SEB tactical deputies at this point.
Highly trained, highly capable. These guys are very skilled. I actually did a whole SWAT academy with them. Boy, it was a while ago.
I bet that was eye-opening.
I couldn't survive it today, but that was when I was a little bit younger, and I tell you, it was brutal. These guys are amazing. As how hard they train. It's highly competitive to get on the unit, and they are habitually training and getting better and better. And they have tactics that are quite, frightening, to be honest.
Look at what they've had to do
If you are a
just
bad
today.
guy, you don't want these guys coming and finding you. You don't have much of a chance against them. And they are very proud of this unit, and they're considered one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. In fact, in the academy that I took with the SEB, there were folks coming in from France, from Italy. There were Navy SEALs in that academy. That shows you the respect that this group has when it comes to how prepared they are, how good they are, because, Navy SEALs are coming to the LA Sheriff's Department to get special tactical training.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, so these
We're
guys
so
are
fortunate they're here.
Yeah, they're very capable, and if they show up and you're a bad guy, that's the last thing you want to see.
Looks like that robot has gone away, and no, it's right there standing by.
Yeah, it's kind of staged a little bit further away. I wonder if it has a good, because it has a camera that could push way in, so maybe it has a better angle right there.
And we say the K9, he was on standby, or she was on standby, and that's kind of
still there.
stand down for now. You see it?
The K9 is right there.
Okay.
Right, you see the guy moving?
Oh, that's the
walking
long leash
backwards?
that he's holding.
Yeah, he's holding that long leash.
Okay.
Yeah, that leash right there, that's the K9's leash.
Okay.
So they're staged and ready to go as well. All these guys, and there's the blue gloves that Bill Thomas was talking about. These guys are prepared to administer aid when they get there, when given the green light to move in, but they're also capable of being tactical officers as well. There's a K9.
Well, maybe they'll bring that in.
And he is standing out there.
Yeah, David, I think you're going to see a move right about now. It seems like they formulated this. They're very confident the suspect is incapacitated, and they are forming a team to go in.
Yeah, it looks that way.
You're right.
7HD just keeps the shot. We're going to see that quickly.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. It does seem like physicality has changed a little bit. The K9 unit does seem to be out there kind of isolated. They seem like they're ready to go. You'll notice the group of officers here we go. Yeah, it does seem like, Bruce, that they're about to go in.
yeah, because you saw the other officers stand back and just let these special units do their thing.
Well, I wonder if they're going to kind of get in their stack and kind of go in as well, maybe using the Bearcat as cover. But let's see what happens It does almost appear that the canine might be the first in, but we don't know yet. It's just speculation.
Yeah, I think they're going to deploy the canine first, see if they get a reaction to possibly, the Malinois are such strong dogs that they can probably pull the suspect out of the vehicle, and then the deputies will be there to take him or her into custody or render aid.
All right, you're right. They're going to use that Bearcat as a protection.
Yeah, the Bearcat's moving up slowly. The guys are behind it, using it for cover, taking a great deal of precaution. And keep in mind, the Bearcat's up front. There are people looking directly into the car in case something happens. So there's direct communication between these guys in the front Bearcats and the guys in the Bearcats back here, and they are going to slowly move up. The canine is ready to go.
And that man on the roof there, you see him at the ready as well.
In the turret, he is covered, ready to go. He's going to have a good vantage point there.
And that man on the roof there, you see him at the ready as well.
Man, the dog is really going now. He's ready to go.
There we go.
They let him go. Let him look.
Wow.
Okay, brace yourself, though. Okay, he's pulling on the suspect. The suspect is not moving.
They are strong.
They're very, very strong.
Look at that.
Very strong dogs.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay, he's pulling the suspect. We may have to pull the shot out just in case. If we do, we're not doing it because, we want to frustrate you. We just don't want you to see something you shouldn't see. So we're going to be very careful about the shot. Right now, the dog is inside the cockpit of the car, pulling on the suspect. You could see movement from the suspect and the dog pulling the suspect, but so far, no retaliation from the suspect at all, which is a sign that the suspect may very well be incapacitated or even dead.
And they're moving in on the passenger side there right now.
With the shield.
With the shield.
Looking inside. The dog is pulled out. The long leash. He did his job. His job is over with. And now they're pulling the suspect out. All right. Clearly, the suspect is not a threat. He may, be careful here, where he may not even be alive. But the suspect is now out. Okay. We're going to pull the shot out a little bit. So now the suspect is out behind the Trius. It is in front of the back Bearcat. And then this is the point where they will begin to administer aid. You notice some of the officers or the deputies are looking inside the car. They've checked the car. There's nobody else in it. And now it's time to deliver aid. They'll probably pull the ambulance up now. Bruce, what did you think about that?
They were using the dog as a distractionary device while the officers approached from the other side, but also wanted to see if the suspect had a reaction. In this case, I don't think he had a reaction. I think the canine was tugging on his arm and possibly biting him, and there was no reaction. And when the officers approached and they made entry into the cockpit of the vehicle, I hate to say it, but I think the suspect might be dead.
Yeah. And, okay, so this is interesting, Bruce. You notice the officers, the deputies all standing around the suspect. They don't have to do that, but is this intentionally to kind of, out of respect, so the cameras aren't on them, just to keep them covered a little bit?
To some degree, but also you got to remember it is an active crime scene. So this area has to be processed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Interesting how they use the dog as a distraction, and that
probably a dual purpose.
Right.
Right. And you did notice while we were watching that dog do his thing, they were coming up on the other side of the vehicle. And
wow.
All right. So the suspect is on the ground. That's where that group of officers, deputies, are gathered around the suspect right now. They're administering aid. I imagine at this point, maybe they'll bring in the ambulance, but I'm not sure, because if he's deceased and there's nothing they can do, then they'll probably handle it a little bit differently.
Right, because he was shot and bleeding, and that was quite a long time to be in that car.
All right, so this...
Yeah, they're going to have Vernon Fire respond further up into the operational area now and render aid.
All right. So there's a lot of questions that remain to be answered. Who is this guy? Is he the one that was seen in that convenience store with a giant handgun that killed the clerk inside the store? The one that we saw run in and run out quickly. Look at on the right-hand side, the suspect on the far right. That was from a convenience store earlier this week where he shot and killed somebody. And then the middle shot is a still of him holding the handgun out from this particular pursuit. And the whole thought was Downey PD was trying to pull this Prius over because they felt that the suspect inside this car was the same person that you see on the far right-hand side.
It does appear that that is the same gun.
Yeah, it's pretty clear. So that suspect may be deceased. Nevertheless, he is out of the vehicle. He is on the ground, and they're administering aid. This part of this pursuit is coming to an end, and now there he is. Okay, so we want you to watch this closely. That's the suspect. He runs up to the convenience store, runs inside. That's from the camera inside the convenience store. There he is, just casually walking in, pulls out the gun, and he starts firing. He didn't steal anything. He just ran in, shot the clerk, and ran out.
And
Clearly, that was his intention.
And a witness said that perhaps he was dropped off, picked up, and that could have been that driver today.
Yeah,
we don't know.
Speculation on whether or not that person that was driving the vehicle is the same person that might be involved with the other crime. We just don't know. That's one of the many questions here.
Miraculously, though, no officers were injured, thankfully, and also the civilians that were so close to that shooting right during the pursuit, directly behind the shooter, that was a civilian car that had the wherewithal in that moment of panic to back away.
Yeah, what a remarkable afternoon. It's been a violent afternoon here in Southern California. All this going down in Vernon when it started in Downey with a hail of gunfire. Also, what I think is almost remarkable is the driver of this vehicle was able to surrender and get out after that shooting.
Exactly.
After seeing all the bullets flying through that car, she survived and got out. She was bloody, but it appears that none of her vitals were hit. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, and we'll go over some of the details with this, and of course, there's a lot of questions that remain when it comes to what happens from here with this investigation. Who are these people? And if this is the person involved with that convenience store hit, what was the basis behind that? What was the motivation? Why did he do it? Was he paid to do it by somebody else?
And Bruce Thomas, any final thoughts on the situation?
You know, now what you're going to see are hours and hours of investigation. You have multiple personnel who were involved in the initial incident from different agencies. Ultimately, what you saw was the professionalism, the training of the police officers and the sheriff's deputies, and that's what we expect from our personnel.
Right. Bruce, thank you so much for helping us on our coverage. Once again, you've been invaluable. And then Miriam Hernandez, you are standing by on the ground nearby. What's happening where you are?
Yes, a far different scene now than what we had been watching for the previous hour. Now a number of officers, deputies are there clustered around the car, as you can see, and we are waiting to hear further word on the condition of the suspect. My apologies in advance. You've been talking and bringing everybody updates as you have seen them. From this vantage point, we cannot see what you have seen, and because of all the chopper noise here, it's been hard to listen in to everything that you've seen. In an abundance of caution, Vernon PD expanded the crime scene. So we had to get in our truck and move back so that we'd be further away from where this incident was taking place, where this standoff was taking place. That is in an abundance of caution. When bullets fly, they keep on going until something stops them. And you know that bullets can go a long distance. So not sure if they were concerned about the gunman inside the car, or perhaps even the deputies firing if that became necessary. But they did move us back and tell us that the crime scene now is here at Vernon Avenue, where just south of where the car has been stopped. We're waiting to get a debrief now from whichever agency, I guess the Sheriff's Department, to tell us exactly what happened there in those final moments. The waiting game, the standoff, lasting for quite a while. There was new movement they had been watching and monitoring with that robot. We saw the robot going in, getting a very close-up shot of any movement that may have continued in the car after a time as the car had been stopped. And then, of course, the two flashbangs to see whether that passenger, that gunman rather, would react to that loud noise. That would be a clue as to whether that person was still conscious or not, whether that person had suffered any gunshot wounds in the fracas between the pursuing officers and the gunman. We do not know his condition yet. We're waiting to hear from the people who have gotten a close-up view and who have been informed. We now see an ambulance moving closer to the scene. You'll see it come up in the shot in a few moments. We don't know whether this is the ambulance that will be addressing any possible wounds to the suspect or transporting him, but we do see both an ambulance, paramedics, and a fire truck from the city of Vernon moving towards the location. Again, those deputies are at the scene of the vehicle. They're just standing there right now. We see the paramedics approach. They're there on the corner of Bandini and what is this street here? Fruitland. And just waiting to see what happens next. Yeah. So David and Ellen, we're watching what you're watching, and okay, now we see the ambulance coming into our picture, and you likely can see it, from Air 7 much more clearly. We'll see whether they have a wounded person that they will be transporting, or whether, in fact, this person has succumbed to his injuries.
And Miriam, thank you very much.
Back to you, Ellen and David. Yeah.
Yeah, quite a day, and to see the culmination at the very end with the canine going in to distract that suspect to see if he'll flinch, and then the special agents coming in from the other side. It was quite a sight to see that.
Yeah. It's been a dramatic afternoon here in Southern California because of the terrible violence that so many civilians found themselves in the middle of, and police officers as well. Deputies as well, when it comes to this very violent suspect, the way he so coldly killed somebody earlier this week, if that is in fact the same suspect, to the way he hung out the window of the passenger side, just blatantly firing at officers. So they had no choice but to return fire. And this is a culmination of all of that violence. It appears that the suspect is clearly down. We don't know if he's alive. The woman driving the vehicle, is in custody. She looked to be injured, but she is alive. We don't know. We don't think anybody else was hurt in all of this, but it certainly came close in a lot of ways.
Watching these paramedics, and we'll have to see if there's some urgency there or what's going to transpire here.
Our producer thinks that they've spotted an IV, so they've hooked up an IV up to the suspect. So they're doing what they can to keep him alive. You see the SWAT officer holding the IV. He is standing right in. Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. The deputy with his back to the Bearcat, the furthest Bearcat. He's the one just bending over right now. Yeah, he's holding an IV in his hand. So they're rendering aid. So he's alive. And they're doing what they can. We don't want to show you too much. Clearly, there's red down there. The suspect is bleeding. But they are rendering aid, and he might have a pulse, so they're doing their best to keep him alive.
And you see those the special blue gloves, and they're trained paramedics as well. So some of them are especially cross-trained.
So apparently they're going to put him on a backboard as they hold this IV. They're going to transport the suspect as best they can. These paramedics do seem to be working with some urgency now, moving around the suspect, getting him strapped in. SCB members are there as well, helping out. So there he goes. We're going to be careful here. You see him shirtless. He also has a bandage around his head. Perhaps he has a head injury, a head wound from the shooting. There is some red there. They're about to transfer him into the ambulance, but he is on the gurney right now, strapping him into the gurney. Boy, is that blood on the ground?
I can't tell.
That is something. Clearly he's been hit and badly injured, but he's alive. At least by that shot right there, we know that the suspect is alive. They have oxygen going into him, an IV going into him. He is wrapped up. They cut into his pants. They took his shirt off. They're doing what they can on this site, and then Vernon Fire is going to transport him to the hospital. Well, to try to keep him alive. There's so many questions revolving him, who he is, why did he do what he did, if that is in fact him on that video from earlier in the week.
And this vast crime scene, because the shooting happened away from this, and then it'll be interesting to see, how long it'll take for them to clear that area.
Miriam said that there will be some kind of a debrief for the news folks that are out there right now. We don't know if it's from Vernon PD, from Downey PD, or the Sheriff's Department, but hopefully somebody will answer whatever they can say at this point, because as we often know with these investigations, there's little information up front. It takes days and weeks for that information to finally become available. But perhaps they can tell us some of their motivations on why they did what right now. They obviously aren't going to be able to tell us a whole lot about the murder investigation from earlier this week. Okay, so we're going to continue to watch this as paramedics render aid and transport that suspect to the hospital. But he is alive. Remarkably, he is alive. As you watch that video and see the gunfire going through that car, I think it's rather remarkable, but the driver was able to get out of the car and basically walk to safety and be taken into custody. But the suspect being alive still is pretty incredible as well.
And Miriam Hernandez has been near that scene. She's told to back away a little bit, but you have more information, Miriam? Or...
Yes, no real information, just observations. We see that ambulance pulling up just a little bit. We're not sure where that ambulance may be headed, but the closest trauma center is likely County USC. I understand from the shot that you had from Air 7, you could see the suspect being treated by paramedics and deputies also assisting with an IV and making sure that he was secured on the gurney before they lifted him into that ambulance. It's now heading away from the scene. We are not sure yet when we will be getting more details about how this all unfolded. The sheriff's deputy I just talked to said that they might be dispensing the information from Downey, where all this originated, but we will try and get as much information from the scene as we can. We now see that armored vehicle leaving the scene as well. This scene is being cleared, so we expect that we'll be able at least to approach some of the vehicles that are still there, some of the personnel that is still there, and find out what we can about just what happened and the process they went through in order to resolve this matter with no further injury to anybody else, to civilians or to any police personnel. David, Ellen.
All right, Miriam Hernandez, thank you. It is Mark Brown and Michelle Tuzzi here as we begin Eyewitness News at 5 with this breaking story we've been following now for the better part of 2 hours. Pursuit, a shootout, and a suspect now in custody and in an ambulance. It's a shootout on the streets of Southern California, a pursuit with a murder suspect here, the passenger firing out the window right in the middle of traffic, unsuspecting drivers caught in the middle of it all, police returning fire, shattering the glass on the back of that Prius. The woman who was driving the car tried to get away at one point, but she, covered in blood, gives up, surrendered to police. The passenger, though, the one with the gun, still inside. Now the SWAT team is at the scene. They get there, they use tear gas, and a robot to get close to find out the fate of that suspect who has been shooting it out with police. I'm Mark Brown. This is Eyewitness News at 5.
And I'm Michelle Tuzzi, and these are live pictures now from Air 7, or actually, I'm sorry, not live pictures, but these are pictures from earlier when the SWAT team moved in. This was just moments ago, taking that suspect, the passenger who had a weapon, out of the car. Again, we have been following this just before 3 p.m. We don't know the condition of that passenger. We do know at the very least he was gravely injured. We do know that that passenger is described as a murder suspect, and now we are seeing live pictures of that transport. And here is video of the crime that this person may be involved in. This may be the person that is being taken to a hospital right now. The suspect in a convenience store clerk in the murder of a convenience store clerk in Downey. It happened Tuesday night. This was captured on surveillance store video. You can see the suspect going in and then running out. And when we saw those first images yesterday, it was very disturbing because he ran in with a very large handgun. He was in and out in a matter of seconds, and it was almost just like an assassination took place.
Right.
The store clerk, Gurpreet Singh, a Marine and a beloved person in his community, was killed. And now we are at this situation in the city of Vernon where a police pursuit ended perhaps with that suspect that you're seeing here on the right involved.
Yeah, the similarity of course, as you notice, this revolver that was used in the murder of Mr. Singh, similar, very similar to the revolver that was pointed out the window and fired at pursuing police. The suspect looking similar as well, that long-barreled handgun in both instances, and the suspect that they were looking for was in fact a murder suspect. We are trying to pin this down and determine for sure if the man who's in the back of that ambulance now is the suspect in the murder of that store clerk, Mr. Singh.
And we continue to look at live pictures now of the transport of this murder suspect to a hospital, being followed by authorities behind there. And as the investigation continues on scene, and it was a very alarming scene for a lot of motorists who witnessed that gunfire today, a shootout between pursuing authorities and that murder suspect, and then that pursuit coming to an end at Downey Road and Bandini Boulevard at 2:45 p.m. The female driver surrendering, getting out with blood on her pants. And shortly thereafter, the SWAT team was called in, tear gas was used, a canine was called in, and they eventually were able to get that suspect out of the car. At first, it looked like the person may have been deceased, but apparently the person is still showing signs of life and is now being taken to a hospital. Eyewitness News reporter Miriam Hernandez has been following this scene from the ground level, and she joins us now with a live report. Miriam?
Yes, right now over here you can see to your left a number of the sheriff's vehicles leaving the scene, armored vehicles that had tailed the suspect vehicle and then surrounded it. There goes the canine unit, all these units involved in the takedown of this suspect. This all happened as rush hour was getting away, a very frightening scene for motorists because this gunman was literally hanging out the passenger window and firing shots. It all ended up right here near Atlantic and Bandini, and the Prius is still there. This is the getaway car. This is the car from which those shots were fired. There was a female driver who did give herself up and surrender, but the shooting did not stop. There was an exchange of gunfire, and there for about 2 hours there was a standoff here. There were a number of maneuvers to find out what exactly was going on inside that car, whether the gunman was still moving, whether he was still a threat. They had a dog there. They utilized flashbang grenades to see if he would respond. Ultimately, they decided that he was no longer a threat. They moved in very quickly to make sure they got him in custody, got him in handcuffs, and then they put him on a gurney. They treated him for his injuries on the scene, at least rendered some aid, some first aid, and then put him in the ambulance, and they're now taking him away. You can also see an armored truck there now leaving the scene, just passing by. But this remains a crime scene. This remains an active crime scene as they have to look at, all the rounds fired, who fired them, how many rounds did the suspect fire, how many rounds did the deputies fire. All that has to be recorded, logged, and they want to make sure that everything was done here by the book. But as far as we could see, as far as we could monitor, this individual was just extremely desperate, trying to get away. A murder suspect in a high-profile case in Downey. Deputies wanted to get him, but he was determined not to be caught until these final moments here in Vernon. That's the latest we have now. We're waiting to get some information from the sheriff's deputies as to what happened in this process and get the latest on the condition of the suspect. Reporting live from Vernon, Miriam Hernandez, ABC7 Eyewitness News.
Okay, thank you, Miriam. And the image on your right is the live picture from Air 7 HD. That is the ambulance carrying that pursuit suspect, the murder suspect, being driven, we believe, to County USC Medical Center. He's in Lincoln Heights right now on his way to what we believe is County USC. That is the nearest trauma center where he will be treated. And to the great surprise of a lot of us, the suspect apparently still alive after that barrage of gunfire, and he will be treated. If he can be saved, he will, of course, face trial.
All right. It is a story we will continue to follow. We'll keep you posted on any new developments. In the meantime, we move on to another frightening situation. An improvised explosive device detonates in a man's hands.
It happened outside of Fullerton Denny's restaurant. Police say it wasn't the only one. Orange County reporter Greg Lee has more.
This photo from an eyewitness shows the immediate aftermath of an explosion in Fullerton. Fullerton police say the 59-year-old homeless man in the picture was holding an IED when it went off.
Significant injuries, loss of fingers, significant damage to his hands, as well as to his throat and face area.
Police say he's expected to survive. It happened around 9 this morning behind a Denny's near Orangethorpe and Harbor, where neighbors say many homeless people sleep. This man felt the blast.
Like somebody hit the car, like a big loud thud or a backfire. But I didn't see anything that was like an explosion.
Remarkably, no one else was injured and there was no damage to any buildings. When officers arrived, they found a second suspicious device and called the sheriff's bomb squad.
The Orange County Sheriff's Bomb Squad has completed their investigation. They have found an improvised explosive device.
The bomb squad rendered the device safe. The man is expected to face criminal charges for possessing the IEDs. Detectives were collecting evidence and must now figure how they were made and why this man had them.
It was a black powder device, probably the size of between a golf ball and a baseball, filled with black powder and a fuse.
Greg Lee, ABC7 Eyewitness News.
Charges in a dragging death after an attempted purse snatching caught on this surveillance video. Both 19-year-old Gregory Walker and 20-year-old Giovanni Guy of Los Angeles face a murder count. A third suspect, 19-year-old Brad Brown of Hawthorne, was charged with robbery. Investigators say you can see 31-year-old Nya Nok Win of Santa Ana outside a shopping center in Garden Grove Wednesday when one of the robbers grabbed her purse. She was thrown to the ground and she was run over and killed. The suspects sped off, but sheriff's deputies caught them.
Spring showers hitting Southern California today. If you've been outside, you probably got caught in it. The rain's been moving across L.A., the valleys, and the Inland Empire all day. Could it turn out to be a wet weekend? Let's check in with our meteorologist, Dallas Raines. Dallas.
Thanks, Mark. Well, certainly today, a lot of clouds across Southern California. Had the time lapse going. Rainfall totals between about 1/10 and 1/2 inch of rain up in Ventura County. We've seen some thunderstorms rumbling around up there. Here's the live Megadoppler 7000 HD right now. So let's zoom in on that area that we saw the thunderstorms earlier. This was around the Santa Paula north into Frazier Park. Looks like now all the thunder and lightning has ended.